A pleasant and blessed day to all of us. Welcome to all of you here on Agenda. I am your host, Cito Beltran, hoping that you are doing well, you are feeling well, and thank you for joining us today. And today is June 30, 2022. It's a special occasion, and in many parts of Metro Manila, it's a holiday because today is the inauguration of the 17th President of the Republic of the Philippines, none other than President-elect Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. Okay, so we will be covering that event live here on Cignal TV. But in the meantime, we will continue with our regular programming until 9 o'clock today. Welcome and thank you for those who are subscribers of Cignal TV, viewers of One News PH, and of course, so those of you who continue to watch Agenda, maraming salamat po, especially our kababayans abroad who try to catch us even on Facebook.com/OneNewsPH and on YouTube. As I mentioned, it's the 30th day of the month, the last day of the Duterte administration. There's going to be a lot of activities today. But in the meantime, let's go to our daily starter, and it is from psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl, who said, "Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." Okay, this is a very important reminder to all of us because we tend to just be overwhelmed by many things. But Mr. Frankel, okay, is one of the thousands of examples of people who who experienced the worst thing that people can do to fellow human beings, and that was the Holocaust. And yet he managed to survive the Holocaust, and he managed to essentially have life even after the Holocaust. So kung ano man yung pinagdadaanan ninyo, look back in history. Look back at the examples of men and women, whether men and women in our faith, in Christianity, or in history, who have survived so much peril, so much torture, etc., etc. It is all about your attitude and choosing your own way. Okay, let's now go to the front page of the Philippine Star. Ayan po, today, June 30, 2022, the headline, "Here Comes the Sun." Okay, medyo kakaiba yung headline ng Philippine Star, but it is a play on, I think, on the Beatles song, "Here Comes the Sun," S-U-N. Marcos Jr. to be sworn in as 17th president. Okay, that big picture that you see there, practice lang po yan. They are the upper photo of the Philippine Star is just the Philippine Army contingent doing drills. Okay, drills near the National Museum for the gun salute of the incoming president. At the top of the front page, we have LTFRB approves 11 peso minimum jeepney fare. Okay, now ewan ko, medyo we have to check on this whether it was really 11 pesos or 1 peso, because from the looks of it, parang dinagdagan lang ng piso yung minimum fare. So anyway, yan po yung header ng Philippine Star. On the upper right side, you have SEC affirms order shutting down Rappler. Now, let's be clear. The SEC canceled the certificate of registration for incorporation kasi wala naman pong karapatan. The Securities and Exchange Commission does not have the right to shut down a company, a business. Kumbaga, that can be done by the mayor, can be done by some other agency. The SEC merely withdrew or canceled the certificate of incorporation or registration. Okay. Meanwhile, current Solicitor General Jose Calida was now appointed to be the next chairman of the Commission on Audit. Okay, and PNB will now be headed by veteran banker Wick Veloso, Jose Arnulfo Wick Veloso, who we have had the privilege of interviewing here in the program. The center photo of the Philippine Star, that is the husband of Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, husband Douglas Emhoff, shooting hoops, basketball at the U.S. Embassy with PBA players looking on. Okay, yan po, no? And then we have PRRD spends final day meeting foreign officials. According to this news item, President Duterte met with Chinese Vice President Wang Xihan and Japanese Foreign Minister Yoshimasa Hayashi, okay, or are scheduled to meet with President Duterte. Okay, anyway, Senate transmits smugglers list to Ombudsman. According to Tito Soto, the Philippine Senate has already sent to the Office of the Ombudsman their investigative report and the list of suspected smugglers or accused smugglers in agricultural smuggling. Tito Soto also chided or called out the National Intelligence Coordinating Agency because the NECA claimed that the list of the Senate, which is the list of Senate President Tito Soto, is a different list from the list of the NECA. Kumbaga, hugas kamay. Now, medyo kinainis ni Tito Soto yon and said na kung gusto niyo kung sabihin niyo ay mali. But do not say that we made up the list or words to that effect. KBP hits NTC restrictions on block time agreements. That, of course, we first tackled yesterday morning with the KBP president and other guests regarding the overreach of the National Telecommunications issuing a memorandum ordering broadcast stations, both TV and radio, to first submit a list of their block timers and their intended partnership with block timers and wait for the NTC approval. Kumbaga binakbakan na sila ng KBP. That bottom photo is a photo of Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte, joined by her family as she takes her oath before Chief Justice Alexander Gesmundo during a swearing-in ceremony at the EVM Convention Center in Quezon City. Okay, and at the same time, it was announced that Quezon City got top compliance marks from COA. Okay, yun din po yung nakuha ng Office of the Vice President yesterday when VP Lenny exited as Vice President, left her office. She left the office with 4 straight years of top compliance grades from the Commission on Audit. Okay. Yan na po ang ating balita. That's news on the front page of the Philippine Star. And now let's talk about food. Okay? Kayong mga Pilipino, mahilig kayo sa pagkain. Okay? However, our topic for today involves an international organization. It actually involves the United Nations agency, and I have long known about them. They've existed since 1945. And they have focused on food concerns, global food issues, and policies. Okay, before we get into anything, let's introduce our guest this morning.
Tamara Duran has been with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations for more than 7 years. In her current work as the Assistant FAO representative, she oversees the program development and management of FAO's portfolio in the country. Prior to this, Duran also worked for the Department of Agriculture and the National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA.
Okay, good morning, Ms. Tamara Duran of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Kayo po ba talaga si Tamara? Kasi baka naman kayo intern lang ni Tamara at napakabata niyo.
Yes, Sir Cito, this is to confirm that it's me, Tamara Duran. Maganda lang po yung gising ko ngayong umaga, probably kaya kaya I look good
No,
in the camera.
I'm happy. I'm happy to see young people in such prominent positions, some in such key positions, not just locally but internationally. I mean, it gives us hope for the future of the world. Okay, now as I mentioned, Tamara, the FAO has been in existence since 1945 and has concerned itself under the wing of the United Nations regarding food security and related subjects. But could you please do us the favor of familiarizing our viewers regarding FAO? Kasi napaka-importante. You guys are so important, but you don't really do a lot to publicize. Kumbaga, hindi kayo mahilig magyabang, mag-self-promote, pero trabaho kayo ng trabaho.
Yes, thank you, Sir Cito. So, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, or shortly FAO, as mentioned, we are part of the UN system or the UN family. We're the technical specialized agency that leads global efforts to address food insecurity, address hunger, and we do this through our initiatives on capacity building support, policy-related engagements, also providing innovations and technologies to the different stakeholders. So nabanggit niyo po, Sir Cito, we're not too flashy because the support that FAO has been providing, especially here in the Philippines, it's really geared towards technical assistance. We're not into funding assistance or funding support, but we work mainly with our partners, primarily with the government counterparts, to address their gaps, their challenges to achieve food security, agricultural development, and also related themes. So it's really mainly to support capacity building at different levels.
Okay, now, kasi what I notice or the general impression, Tamara, is when it's the United Nations, nowadays it's really sad, no? But when you see the United Nations in action, it is often as peacekeeping forces or responding to the climate or to disasters, and then also, of course, feeding the seriously addressing famine in depressed regions. Now, as far as FAO is concerned, or food, ito na, nabubulol na ako, Food and Agriculture Organization is concerned, when and where do you come in? You said that you help in the technical assistance, okay? Pero how does the FAO determine, okay guys, send the team there, let's do something here, or is the FAO has an office everywhere?
Yes, we have offices in different parts of the globe. So dito po sa Philippines, this is a full-fledged representation office. Our headquarters is in Rome, in Italy, but we have different decentralized offices. And also for the Asia Pacific region, we have an office din po that looks after the general issues, the general trends affecting the Asia Pacific region, also in other regions like Africa, also in Europe. But in terms of identifying the type of work that we do for a particular region, or in our case, in a particular country, we are guided by what we call a country programming framework, or the CPF. So the current CPF of FAO in the Philippines, it was developed back in 2018. And actually at this time po, we're undertaking a midterm review because, as you could imagine, a lot has already transpired. There are different developments that have happened since its formulation or its launch in 2018. So at that time, we didn't really have the BARM region, among others. Of course, we had COVID, the recent years, and then recently this crisis brought about the Ukraine and the Russia conflict. So a lot has happened, and we see the need to also be able to align, make sure that we align and we support the current pressing challenges. So the CPF, the current CPF that we have, we identify three main areas, or three outcomes, country outcomes, to which we align ourselves to, or we support our counterparts in achieving. And these three outcomes, they were identified through consultations with our partners. So among others, syempre po yung government, the Department of Agriculture, Department of Agrarian Reform, Department of Environment Natural Resources, DSWD. We also consulted with civil society, private sector, and even the other UN agencies present in the Philippines.
How big is your office, Tamara? Kasi to consult with all of those people, if you have such a small team,
Yep.
it's going to take you forever. So medyo madami-dami yung makikipag-usap muna kayo bago kayo makigalaw.
Opo. We undertook this in a couple of months, but we also engaged a team to support the country office, because, as you pointed out, we have a modest team in the Philippines. So the country programming framework, it identifies nga po yung outcome areas, but the specific projects that we do in the Philippines, it is at the request of the government to FAO. So we don't undertake any specific project na FAO lang ang initiate. Of course, we can provide information or provide the latest developments that may help contribute to the government's programming and planning. But for us to be able to undertake a specific project, it has to be requested by the government from FAO.
So primarily you are experts on call. You are not a agency who sends in teams and does projects with or without the request. Kumbaga, experts on call, and if there is a call, you come in and you sit down with the concerned agencies.
Yes, that's correct, Sir Cito. Although we also respond to humanitarian situations, like during the the Typhoon Yolanda, that period, we had a team that came into the Philippines. It was composed of different experts from the region, from Bangkok, also from our headquarters in Rome. So they came in, but that was because of the extent or the degree of that humanitarian situation. But on a regular basis, as you have noted po, it may seem that we are on call because we respond to the request that we receive from the government.
Okay, now what kind of technical support, let's call it support kasi hindi naman yan pera, no? What kind of technical support does the FAO extend to country members or to the Philippines in particular?
So siguro po I will tackle it through the different outcomes that we have in the country programming framework. So for the first country outcome, which focuses on food security and nutrition, much of the work that we do here is related to policy enhancement, support to improving capacity building on programming and investment by providing evidence. So we conduct technical studies, technical reports, to provide that evidence or to that information that would serve as basis, for example, for the Department of Agriculture to influence their investment and programming decisions, and also their policies. And then we also work with parliamentarians. For example, we came up with this what you call the FAO Legislative Advisory Group in the Philippines, or FLAG PH. So it's composed of key people from the Senate and Congress who are advocates of food security and nutrition, and we provide some technical sessions for them para they could maximize and benefit from this in making different policies. So at the same time, we also introduce different approaches to planning, like on food security and nutrition. We are advocating for nutrition sensitive programming or nutrition sensitive approaches. So this means while we're not in the business of maybe providing vitamins or supplements directly to address nutritional concerns, what we are doing is to identify saan yung areas na mataas ang malnutrition, saan mataas ang stunting, and then in the same way, recommend what kind of commodities that particular area should be planting or should be consuming to be able to address that particular concern. And then we also, of course, provide support to livelihood development so that yung accessibility nila to nutritious food will also be improved. In the second outcome area naman po, which is about essentially it's improving production in a sustainable manner. So we recognize that improving agricultural production and productivity, it should go hand in hand with conserving our natural resources, our environment. So we introduce or we provide different technologies, different innovations. For example, we're working with IP communities on agrobiodiversity. So looking at the traditional practices of IP communities in Ifugao and also in Lake Cebu, South Cotabato, and then based on that, based on the gaps, we introduce some new technologies that the IB communities may consider in conserving their communities. And then also women empowerment. So we work with women farmers, improving their contribution to the value chain. Mostly we see that there's an entry point for them to work on the value adding post-harvesting mostly. So in these IP communities, we have worked with women groups on processing, for example, tomato products. So not just selling them as raw commodities, but processing them into candies or other commodities that they can that they may be able to get higher incomes rather than just selling raw commodities. And then recently we have established a partnership din po with the Department of Tourism. So we would like to support the expansion of farm tourism in the Philippines, and of course considering then that it should be done in a sustainable manner. And
that's interesting, Tamara, because I wrote an article about that because I started out in tourism before I got into media, and I have long been a farm and food security advocate in my small capacity, And in the column that I wrote, I said there are so many people pushing for farm tourism, but it is more like, spend a day in the farm or sleep over in the farm, and people don't get to understand the role and the importance of farms and food production in the tourism chain. So I suggested that government should make it a requirement that for every resort, especially those in islands, they should be required to have some farm, whether on-site or off-site. Basta dapat meron silang kanya-kanyang farm in order to secure their food supply, but also so that they don't interfere with the supply chain of the community they put up business. Kasi that's usually what happens. They fight because when a resort is put up, they compete for the food supply with the locals.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good recommendation, Sir Cito, kasi it, in a way, supports yung sustainability na tinatawag natin. I would like to acknowledge yung point po na that you made in terms of not interfering with the food supply chain, because adding kunwari yung additional demand na ito without addressing the supply side naman would of course affect the food security of other areas that probably depend on that particular food source. So it's a very good recommendation. At this time, we are working with DOT in terms of firming up yung guidelines on agri tourism, and I agree with you that it should not be just going to the farm, sleeping there, taking pictures, but it should be more than that. And at the same time, we would also like to use this as an avenue to increase advocacy, bring back youth in agriculture for them to see na it's not the typical picture where you see, people breaking their backs just to farm rice and other commodities.
Okay, so carry on. You were briefing us on
Yes.
country programs 1 and 2. Okay.
Yes. Opo. So maybe just lastly on country outcome number 2, we're also working with the DENR, particularly the Forest Management Bureau, in terms of forest landscape restoration. So essentially, we support the national greening program of the government to be able to restore and conserve yung ating natural resources in different parts of the country. And also,
how does FAO do that?
Yes, so we bring in experts po to work with our government partners. So recently, we have supported the DNR in coming up with the National Forest Landscape Restoration Action Plan. So it's really more on the policy side, by helping the government coming up with the framework and identifying what strategies they should be pursuing and should be funding, and at the same way help identify areas of possible collaboration din po with other stakeholders.
Okay, in the development of those policies, do you adopt what we could call global trends? Because I consulted with a couple of people who were into preserving the natural, or what do you call it, endemic plant species. And they were saying, Kuya Cito, there are so many popular trees in the Philippines that are not from the Philippines, and they are very bad for Philippine forests. Does the FAO introduce or incorporate those suggestions that the Philippines should replace non-endemic, or tama ba yung term ko, Tamara? Pasensya ka na, no? non-native trees in their programs?
Well, not directly on that topic, Sir Cito, but in terms of making sure that in coming up with that plan, there has been a multisectoral consultation, discussions with other stakeholders. We advocate for this, and we support the government in conducting these kinds of stakeholder consultations po, so that we also hear that perspective or those different inputs from the communities themselves.
Okay, so so country outcome number 2, number 3.
Now we proceed to number 3. So the third one is about addressing the vulnerabilities of the country. The vulnerabilities brought about by, on one hand, we have natural hazards that affect the country, and also on another side, we have the human-induced disasters or the conflicts that mostly are in Mindanao. So on the natural hazard side, we support disaster risk reduction and management approaches. Recently, we have introduced sort of like an innovative approach. We call it anticipatory actions, wherein we encourage people to act ahead of a disaster. So the approach that FAO is promoting, it follows a scientific approach, and we work with different partners, for example, Pag-asa, so that we'll be able to make use of their early warning systems, the information that they produce, and then come up with set of triggers so that we will know, for example, rainfall has reached this amount, what kind of interventions or measures that the community has to take so that they can safeguard or save their livelihoods rather than just leaving it there po and have it affected by whether it's typhoon or
Ayun,
it's
okay. So
flooding.
parang like if the harvest is almost ripe and ready for reaping, and there is a coming typhoon, harvest it na lang and dry it in the barns or in the whatever in the kamalig.
Yes.
And I know for floating fish cages, which I tried out in Palawan, if there's a impending typhoon, we untie all of the nets, bundle them and sink them into the seabed para hindi sila masira or mawala during the typhoon. Okay, Tamara, if you would, let's go for a quick break. When we return, I'd like to talk specifics regarding food security or insecurity and the crisis, state of crisis in Philippine agriculture. We'll be right back with Tamara Duran here on Agenda. Okay, welcome to the program Agenda, and joining us today is the Assistant Representative of the Food Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, Tamara Duran. Tamara, welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, Tamara, let's talk about particulars or specifics. I think it was Arsenio Balisacan, the former NEDA chief, who said that in his view, Philippine agriculture is already in crisis. Now, does the FAO conduct assessments to be able to forecast if and when this is going to happen? Because this is a serious concern because of food inflation and regional hikes in export prices.
Yes, at this time, Sir Cito, the anticipatory action that I mentioned a while ago, for now we have been focusing it on natural hazards. But given the increasing developments as related to the crisis that's ongoing, the socioeconomic crisis, we're also looking at how to be able to apply this approach to address or to look after economic crisis as well. Previously, FAO did a project on food security and nutrition early warning systems, but it was more at the local level, looking at, for example, movements in local prices or the supply of commodities. But at a macro level, that is something that FAO is keen to explore further.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now earlier in the interview, you mentioned that year on year, there are plans, or I think every 5 years you come up with a program plan suggestion, but now you are going to have to undertake a complete review as a result of COVID, a result of Ukraine, Russia, etc. What are we looking at initially?
In terms of the outcomes, Sir Cito, we see very much that it will likely remain the same in terms of supporting food security and nutrition, promoting sustainable agriculture and conservation of resources, and also addressing vulnerabilities. But in terms of the types of strategies that we will be pursuing and how we will be conducting them, I think that is what has been highlighted in the consultation process so far in the midterm updating. So among others, we have highlighted the need to adopt more innovation. So
Meaning,
innovations pertaining to use of ICT-based solutions, using more information and having them ready, and in a way process na rin po to support programming and the decision making for our government partners. Also, for example, we have introduced before the use of drones in assessing the impacts of a disaster and how it affects, or how the government should be able to address it. And then in the fishery sector, we have also been pursuing the in a way modernization of fishing vessels by using drones as well to combat illegal, unreported, unregulated IUU fishing, and also using marine transponders. So slowly we are going into this. At the community level, we are also trying to build capacities of community organizations to benefit or maximize from e-platforms or online platforms so that they expand their reach as well.
well, what about us in terms of general policies? Because we in the media have been covering this debate on highlighting local production versus import dependence. And one of the undersecretaries that I interviewed said, Cito, you have to balance the interests of the farmers and as well as the interests of the consumers. But it seems that philosophy has been thrown out the window, because now even the exporters, our suppliers such as Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, etc., they have all decided either to keep their products or to raise their prices. Now, what is the position? Does the FAO involve in the making suggestions that, teka, you wait a minute, reduce your imports, strengthen your local production, etc.?
At the global level, Sir Cito, FAO has released a policy note, so sort of to serve as a guide for countries to cope with the impacts of the current crisis. And actually, among the recommendations highlighted in this policy note is to diversify the sources of food commodities. So it does not imply looking for other global or international trade partners, but that policy recommendation or that suggestion that came from FAO also covers strengthening local production. So in a way, it would help us reduce dependence on importation and also, capacitate our smallholder producers. But specifically on that food security, food self-sufficiency discussion, actually one of the suggestions or one of the action points that we would like to highlight for the incoming administration would be to conduct a study so that we have robust data to support our position, whether to pursue food self-sufficiency or should it be food security, or as pointed out earlier, I think you mentioned that we should also balance the different interests of the stakeholders. But at this time, FAO doesn't have we haven't really done an in-depth study on this aspect yet. But given the current trend, the current crisis and the development, we would push to have this kind of study.
I realize that the FAO, the Food Agriculture Organization, does not engage in politics. You abhor politics. There's no color in your policies. Now, but my question is this, okay? Let's, on a historical perspective, the FAO has been around since 1945. Assessing the performance of Philippine agriculture, in the 70s, people were under the impression that we were in the golden years because we had developed the Erie, we had great rice varieties, the Carabao farms, our aquamarine culture, etc. The technologies and the technocrats were there. But since then, everyone has essentially migrated, the experts have migrated. What is the current weakness or the perceived weakness of the country that the incoming administration, aside from doing quality research, what are the weaknesses that need to be addressed?
On maybe one thing that comes to mind is in terms of the productivity of smallholder farmers, because I think comparing with other regional neighbors, we still there's still room for improvement for us to improve, for us to be more competitive in
Okay.
our
Tamara, if you don't mind, I just want to highlight on that what you mentioned. Small holding farmers,
farmers.
maliliit ang lupa,
Correct po.
limitado ang lupa. Okay. Now, I have been arguing that point with people because I said, back in the 80s, we were talking about self-sustaining farms. Kumbaga, for the farmer to be able to support him and his family. But suddenly, everybody starts talking about large-scale farming, corporate farming, etc. Are we talking about the same thing? Smallholding farmers being allowed or capacitated to support themselves para mabuhay sila na maayos.
Yes, that's one aspect of it, Sir Cito, because they would need to, I mean, the livelihoods that they engage into, it should be able to sustain or support their household needs. But one approach that FAO is also pursuing is in terms of shifting their mindsets, graduating from subsistence farming, but also looking at agriculture as an enterprise or as a business, something that they could earn incomes from. So what we have been doing is actually helping them organize themselves into groups, because we have learned also from our field experience that it comes with benefits, especially when you would like to tap into facilities or services being offered by different institutions. It has benefits if you come as a group rather than as a single smallholder farmer.
Yeah, but at the same time, these people can also on their own because I mean, hindi naman sa yabang Tamara, no? Pero ako, mahilig akong dumampot. I love to pick up plants along the way, pick up ideas along the way. And that program of the FAO is something I would wholly support. Now, we have a few minutes left, Tamara. Do you guys invite volunteers, or does the FAO encourage the participation of groups, clubs to help you in your field works, etc.?
Yes, so while I mentioned a while ago po that the projects that we do is usually in partnership with the departments, the different government agencies, we recognize that there are certain activities that can be done more efficient if we partner with local groups. So, for example, in terms of advocacy, also in terms of the specific studies or profiling that we do in different locations, we partner with local organizations and also with academe. Kasi we note, Sir Cito, that some of the SUCs here in the country, they have different strengths that the FAO can pursue and also mainstream in our projects. Like most recently, we partnered with the Caraga State University. They have a very strong ICT center that we have been using in some of our e-agriculture innovations or interventions.
Yeah, I was quite surprised yesterday. We visited the State University and Colleges fair sponsored by the CHED. And I was amazed with some of the universities. There was one school that was providing solar panels and lights to indigent families. There were, of course, marami puro food creation, mga chips, etc. But there was a technology, mechanics, etc., and biodiversification, if you would call it that. But you're correct. There are many schools, universities, universities that entrepreneurs should visit and cooperate with, and also the FAO. So any message from the FAO before we end the interview, Tamara?
Well, firstly, Sir Cito, I'd like to thank you for giving us this opportunity to share what FAO is about, but I think most importantly, to be able to share the importance of attaining food security and how food security is not just something that the government should be doing, but it's actually something that each and every one of us can take a part of. So we hope that we'll be given more opportunities to collaborate and maximize on each other's strengths, synergize, and rest assured that FAO will always be here to support the country in achieving its development goals for the sector.
Okay, I'll be calling you on that, Tamara,
Yes.
because we at least now you've gone through the experience. I think you can attest to the fact that agenda does not have an agenda. Okay, our agenda is your agenda.
Yeah.
We want to promote public information. We want to promote awareness, and of course, we want to give the institutions that contribute so much, like the FAO, the opportunity to be known by the Filipino people. Thank you very much, Tamara.
Thank you, Sir Cito, and thank you also for One News for inviting us. We really recognize how media is a key contributor in terms of pushing these kinds of important agenda and advocacy. Thank you, Sir
Okay,
Cito.
thank you. That's Tamara Duran, Assistant Representative of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Okay, I mentioned to Tamara earlier that nakapunta po kami sa SUC Fair. If you recall, when we had CHED Chairman Popoy de Vera on the program, pinagmalaki niya yun, and he invited us. In fact, he was asking me to be a judge in the wine tasting. No, I did not drink. I don't drink anything alcohol related before sundown. And in any case, the event was such a great event to visit, and there were so much. Now I believe it's still ongoing. This may be the last day, I think, but please, if you can make time, go to the MOA. Okay, the Mall of Asia, yung Shoe Mart ba, yung SM, napapagalata yung edad ko, Shoe Mart. Okay, but go to the MOA, I think it's in the music hall area, and you will see well, it wasn't a very, very big exhibit, so hindi kayo mapapagod, but it was very interesting. First, to discover how many state universities and colleges there are from Luzon down to Sulu. Okay, there were state universities and colleges in Sulu na sabi ko meron pala niyan sa Sulu. Akala ko war zone ng Sulu. I mean, we all have our preconceived notions. So in any case, please go there, because you will discover that our SUCs are developing not just graduates, but they are developing products, technologies, solutions, and even business opportunities for everyone. And we will try our best to feature them. Okay, let's go for a quick break, and we'll be right back here on Agenda. Welcome back to the program agenda. At noon today, incoming President Bongbong Marcos will officially assume the highest position in the country. And for that purpose, we have our associate Marian Enriquez at the National Museum area to give us an update. Marian, good morning to you.
Good morning, Cito. Over 1,200 guests are expected to attend the inauguration of President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr. here at the National Museum. But before that, guests are required to undergo a health screening at the Philippine International Convention Center, or the PICC, and they need to present a negative RT-PCR test result taken within or high body temperature. And once their tests are negative, they'll be given passes to ride the bus that will bring them here at the National Museum. Actually, there are 3 tents or forums there, and one of which, the VVIP, were the incoming cabinet secretaries, associate justices, the diplomatic corps, the senators and house lawmakers will be situated. Now, the U.S. delegation that will be led by the second gentleman, Douglas M. Hall, the husband of U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, will be also coming, aside from U.S. Virginia Bobby Scott, who is the chairman of the Committee on Education and Labor, and also present for today's event is Chinese Vice President Wang Qishan, Vietnam Vice President Ho Tin Shuan, and we are actually expecting over 1,000 personnel from the PNP and the BFP to secure the BPICC.
Okay, so it doesn't seem to be wall-to-wall people. It seems that the security setup is such that bawal ang dumikit. Is this correct?
Yes, that's still the protocol here. No, we're still trying to observe the physical distancing. But as early as around 8 o'clock or 7, we've seen several supporters of Ferdinand Marcos Jr. outside the perimeter here in National Museum. Actually, one of the entrances that we've seen is from Intramuros, the golf course, and we've seen several supporters very excited.
Okay, Marian, I'll have to let you go because I know kailangan mong pumosisyon. I know you need to get a strategic placement there. So I'll let you go, and please take care of yourself. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Cito.
Okay, that's Marian Enriquez. We had to cut the interview short, or the report short, because they are quite strict in the area, and Marian will have to take her position in order to make the updates for us. Thank you very much for joining us. It's going to be a shorter show today because, as you all know, we will be covering the inauguration, the oath-taking of President-elect Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. Let's all pray for the elected leaders of our country, regardless of your political or color disposition. Let's pray for our country because, as the Bible says, pray for your leaders so that you may live in peace and so all may go well with you. I'm Cito Beltran, thanking you for joining us this morning. Pray for our country, our leaders. God bless all of you.